good Tuesday morning. We are back together. Lots of stuff happened while we were away. Your Rangers got eliminated. The Mets had their 500 road trip. The Yankees are a buzzsaw. NBA Finals last night. Actually, even though the first half was a little slow, ended up being a pretty entertaining game with the third quarter and the fourth quarter, with each team sort of dominating themselves and the Warriors taking that 3-2 lead on the verge of another championship with this core. It's going to be a fun one today. Jam-packed with sports. Yeah, nothing happened really last night out of the NBA Finals, but we're going to have a good one. Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
All right. Good morning, Jay. Yeah, nice 4 days off. That was pretty good and recharged for sure, and certainly disappointed and frustrated about what happened on Saturday night. But, you know, I think about all the things that have been said about the Rangers. And believe me, I've been paying attention. I've been listening to everybody.
Oh, you've been taking it all in, huh?
Yeah, everybody's kind of got a theory on it. And we all hockey fans see games differently. We see players differently. And nobody sees the players better than the coaches and the general managers and the scouts of their own teams. They're always watching players. They're always seeing whether or not they're engaged, whether or not there's a problem. And, you know, sometimes you have to make tough decisions because of other issues that may be going on the roster and things of that nature. And I know that, like, the number one thing coming out of Game 6 was the fact that Capo Caco was scratched. And everybody was wondering, you know, what's going on? Did he break a team rule? Did he do this? Did he do that? You know, going into the game, even though it was announced that Hedel and Strome were going to play in the game, and every one of us was really happy to hear that both of those guys who had been playing well were going to be coming back from injury or at least trying to play through injury. It was going to be good for us. We were going to have our full complement of our team. And, you know, they know internally whether or not a guy is really going to be able to go the entire game and maybe even overtime in a situation like this.
Sure, especially you're talking about an elimination game. You got to leave it all out there.
And the thing that I appreciate as a former athlete and not a NARP, I appreciate Ryan Strome's willingness to go out and give it everything he possibly had, to leave everything on the ice. And, you know, I told you, it's not that I was a big critic of his. It's just that, you know, we all realize that, you know, he benefits from playing with Artemi Panarin and this power play, which has been the most lethal power play maybe in Rangers history, which has been unbelievable. And he has inflated point numbers, I think, because of all of that. But what I didn't realize about him was just how tough he truly was.
What do you have, a pelvis injury?
He had a pelvic injury, yes.
Pelvic floor like Al did?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. But something that
hernia mesh?
Could have been a hernia thing. Something that was extremely painful that he tried to play through. Now, there could be the argument that you'd say, okay, he has the injury. They know what the injury is, and they know the injury is not easy to deal with when you're skating and you're going 100 miles an hour and you're playing in the Eastern Conference Finals against a two-time Stanley Cup champion.
You don't have the full complement of your pelvis.
So why would you put him out there?
Yeah.
Well, you know, you put him out there because you believe in that guy. He's been a part of your team the whole year. And maybe, just maybe, you get a period and a half out of him. Maybe you get a couple power plays out of him, and maybe get a couple goals. But then you have to refortify the team somewhere else, and you may be looking at your entire team saying, okay, who's engaged and who's not engaged? So for me anyway, as a Ranger fan who sees it maybe the way that I see it, is that Capo Caco, the last 3 or 4 games against Tampa Bay, was not engaged for whatever reason. He may be hurt. Maybe he just didn't want to take the body. Maybe he didn't want to hit anybody. And I for the first time, how
does he not want to hit anybody?
Well, for the first time, I felt like, you know, man, this kid just is not playing strong enough and tough enough, and he's not getting winning the puck battles in the corner. So if everybody were healthy and everybody were showing up, I don't think there would have been any lineup changes whatsoever. But because you're not really sure about 3 of your centers, and the other center being Barclay Goodrow, who obviously had a broken ankle, and you have Filipino, who knows what he's dealing with, and Ryan Strome, you're thinking that there's 3 compromised players right there. So you might want to bring in a few other guys like that can actually skate and go full bore, and you never know. You may catch lightning in a bottle. And I think that's probably as simple as I can say in terms of like the way things started to play out there towards the end of it, and they're in the midst of a 4-game losing streak. So something had to give, and I think, you know, whether it's a wake-up call for Capo Caco or we all think he's better than he really is right now, because remember, he's still a kid. All of these guys are still kids. That, there was a moment where the management of the team, and that would include Chris Drury, I'm telling you, they're not doing anything without talking to the GM, by the way. And if there's one thing that we've all learned already in the short tenure of Chris Drury, he knows what he's doing. He really does know what he's doing. The trade deadline acquisitions.
I mean, it basically put them where they ended up. I mean, it put them over the top, got them into the Eastern Conference Final. This is what Gerard Gallant said about it, which is, he doesn't say a lot, but I feel like there's a lot in here. Which is
I'll translate for you.
Yeah. So this is what he said. He said, trying to win a hockey game, and this is on Capo Caco directly. The question was, why was he a scratch? Trying to win a hockey game and just dressing my lineup. So when we sit down and talk about our lineup, that's what we do.
So basically he's saying that the kid's not engaged, he wasn't playing well, and we really weren't getting much out of him. And believe you me, they sit down and they watch every single player on every single shift. They know the analytics. They know what they're doing. They know where they are. They know whether or not they're hitting somebody. And I'm just telling you, I just think that they felt like whatever happened to him, whether it be injury or whether he was tired or whether I doubt he broke any sort of team rule. I heard some of that too, but
no, I mean, it was all about his play, right?
Yes,
I mean, come on,
right? They weren't getting anything out of him, and then when Philip Hedl went out, now all of a sudden you saw there was at least Lafreniere was actually engaged and was hitting people and trying to get shots off, and then they started moving lines around and changing lines and trying to get Panarin going, and it's frustrating for Ranger fans because we watched this team all year long, and we got more out of it than we could have ever expected. It was a great season. It really was. I mean, I didn't expect this. I certainly expected maybe a shot at the playoffs because they were going to go after something that they needed to go after at the end of last year, and that was to get tougher. And by signing Barclay Goodrow and Ryan Reeves and making the trade for Andrew Kopp and Tyler Mott, they made the team tougher. Plus, the younger guys who last year maybe weren't so tough came back tougher themselves. So you got to remember, like a guy like Keandre Miller put on 10 pounds, and all of a sudden he looks like a different player. So here's where I think we sit right now as Ranger fans. We got a bright future because we got a goalie. We certainly have a goalie. Nobody ever has an issue with this guy. This guy's an amazing player. He's like a third defenseman back there. And we'll have to find a backup goalie because Georgiev is going to end up either most likely being a sign and trade or something like that, but he's not going to be with the team. You got your 5 starting defensemen. Think about this for a second. You have Truber, Miller, Fox, Lindgren, and Schneider. Schneider's 20 years old. And if there's one thing that he did this in this particular series, way too many panic icings. He's not going to do that next year. He's going to be better. He's going to be more solid. He's going to be bigger. He's going to be more physical, and he's already a physical player. They just have to figure out what they're doing with his partner, and they do have a kind of a bad contract with Patrick Nemeth. They got to figure out how to get rid of him. You have Kreider and Zibanejad coming back. You have Panarin coming back. You got Lafreniere, Hedl, and Kakko right now. You'd like to think that they're all going to come back. Couple of bridge deals maybe somewhere in here. Goudreau and Blais are coming back. The big question, is it Ryan Strome? Is it Andrew Kopp? Is it a trade for somebody like Mark Scheifele? Somebody like that to fill out the roster. If you can afford all this, these are the things that you have to worry about. And then they just signed Vitaly Kravtsov, their first-round Russian, supposedly sniper winger. But they gave him a 1-year deal, and it's a one-way deal. So he has to be at the NHL level. And then they have about 4 or 5 prospects that are in the minors that will have opportunities to make the big club, due in large part probably to their salaries and and the fact that they're going to be cheap and they're going to be affordable. And then next year around the trade deadline, we'll see what Chris Drury does. But they have some managing.
At what point did you change, to go from this sucks that we were up 2 games to none and had a 2-goal lead in Game 3 to it was a great season? Because, that's the tough thing to sort of decipher.
The thing that bothered me more about this particular series than anything else were the late goals that Tampa scored at one to win a game with less than 2 minutes to go. And then the other night, they score the game-tying game on a shot by Vetrano, and they're still on the power play. And then 21 seconds later, it goes Palat, Kucherov, Stamkos back at the net. And Jacob Trouba was, basically flat-footed. He was flat-footed, like he didn't see it happening in front of him. And, that's why those guys are Hall of Famers. And by the way, Andre Palat's going to be an unrestricted free agent. I want to look at him too. But anyway,
How old is he? Isn't he an old guy?
Yeah, but you could, who says you have to give a long-term contract?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say old guy, but I'm still obviously, as we saw, he dominated most of our players along the boards, in the corners, winning puck battles. But, it wasn't like the team was getting beat 5-1, 4-2. They had They had one bad game in this whole series where they were flat and they didn't look good, and that was game 4. Every other game, the first 2, obviously, I believe they stole from Tampa Bay because Vasilevsky wasn't right. And then all of a sudden, Vasilevsky got right.
I don't know if can you say they stole it when they beat the crap out of them in that first game?
Yeah, but I'm just but we all I can't.
It felt like they were rusty.
Yeah, I just can't think of a hockey announcer or somebody who covers the league that didn't say that there's a potential that Tampa Bay is going to be out of sync in the beginning. And also remember, those first 2 games, they played with 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. Now, that has been something that they have done quite a bit of, but then that changed when they got down to Tampa, and they went back to 12 forwards and 6 defensemen. And I just think that kind of evened out their lines, and they put Steven Stamkos back to center between Kucherov and Palat, and we could not deal with them. Now, it wasn't like they scored 5 goals a game. I mean, Shesterkin kept us in every single game, much like Henrik Lundqvist used to.
Yeah, I mean, you ran into a dynasty. You ran into the middle of a dynasty. I mean, the Islanders ran into a middle of a dynasty the last 2 years in the Eastern Conference Final, and now you've done the same thing. I mean, that as great as these teams have been around here locally and how much fun they've provided the hockey fan in New York, I mean, the bottom line is that you ran into a Hall of Fame group and a dynasty.
Yeah, so, Friday night I'm watching a game with my daughter, Sydney. Mm-hmm. It was Thursday night. And Saturday night I'm watching it with Matt.
Okay.
And it's unique listening to...
Just the two of yous?
I think Sydney was there, too.
Oh, okay.
So.
You think she was?
Yeah,
okay.
So,
all right.
Well, I wasn't really paying attention to her because I was talking to Matt or screaming at the TV.
Gotcha.
But it was, you could just feel like it was a grind. And Matt was saying, this is how they play. This is what they do. I know this because in the last 2 years, this is what we've seen. Mm-hmm. This is something that, they – and the other thing, too, is that when I look at their defensemen and you look at their left side with Hedman, McDonough, and Sergachev, you're like, they got 3 beasts back there that are on the ice every single time.
Who does Matt root for? Or does he root for anybody?
Yeah, well, of course he's not rooting for the Rangers. I can tell you that, or his father-in-law, for that matter. And I was like,
but I would like to love the Lightning.
I was trying. No, I was just trying to say, like, I kind of was rooting for you, Matt. I mean, you think you'd be rooting for me?
Sure.
I mean, that would be like a normal thing, but we tried not to really get into the discussions. And I just, I yelled at the TV, and he thought it was kind of interesting. But I understand who they were playing, what they were doing. And it took me a day to figure it all out and to think about it from my perspective.
You needed a full day.
This is my perspective.
Full day to sink in.
Yeah, and then I shot 77 playing golf. So with my new golf clubs.
Oh, wow.
Boom!
Where
so I started to feel, I can't tell you. So I feel so much better about it. I feel so much better about it.
Why is it a secret?
Well, because I was an invited guest somewhere, and I don't like to discuss,
But this is after the fact. It's not as if you are going there and then people are going to be.
No, it has nothing to do with me going there and hounding me. And I don't give a crap if people hound me. Who cares? Doesn't matter.
Sometimes
I'm just glad people care still. Someday they're going to stop caring, and then what?
No, I don't think so.
And then what?
What
happens?
I think when I wheel you out of here after the show,
right?
15, 20 years from now,
right?
And there'll still be people outside wanting you to sign their dilapidated 7 Jets jerseys.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
So just to put this whole thing to bed, I mean, there were interesting decisions made, but I always say that decisions are made for reasons that sometimes we don't see as fans, and I know that from playing all those years in the NFL. Somebody said, "Why isn't this guy playing? Why isn't that guy playing?" Well, there may be other things that are going on that are impacting why somebody may be pulled out of a lineup. And I know it's Capo Caco. I know he's a 2nd overall draft pick. I gave Al a jersey with his name on it. That's how
wrote a song about Capo.
Right, and that's how happy I was for it. But quite frankly, those last couple games, I didn't see an engaged Capo Caco. I saw a guy that was avoiding hits. I saw a guy that was just too easy to play against. I saw a guy that just was not laying it on the line like the rest of his teammates. You could see it, and that may be the reason why or part of the reason why he didn't play. But I also will say that there were other considerations that you have to take into account, like 3 guys who are dealing with injuries but are out there playing nonetheless, but you don't know whether or not those guys can make it through an entire game. You just don't. So you have to be able to mix and match if you can. And I think they were just trying to see if they can get a spark. And by the way, it's 1-1 with about 5 minutes left to go in Game 6. And Vetrano scores. You're like, okay, here's the break. And that's all it takes is one puck luck, one bounce. Because you know what? Igor is playing his ass off on the other end. And again, he gets kind of hung out to dry on that last goal because our number 1 D pair is sleeping or gets caught flat-footed. But again, they're not going against a third-line group of guys. They're going against Hall of Fame type players. And you're talking about a team, the Rangers, did not have a captain.
Well, there you go.
All right? We
Yes.
did not have a captain.
Mm-hmm.
That's still a big storyline. But the Tampa Bay Lightning, they do have a captain. And that captain showed up big in Game 6. Big in Game 6.
That's Boomer's bow on the Rangers.
I think so.
And now we can go and not talk about hockey for like 2 weeks, and then the season starts again.
I'm just going to go in there and beat the hell out of Al.
That's a sound bite. That's not live.
So I'm going to take you in the corner back there, Al, and just show you what it's all about. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to smash your face up against that window.
Hey, do it right after we do the Jack Pocket read, because it's very important. He's got to get paid for that, so we have to make sure he gets all his Jack Pocket stuff in. It's Boomer and Gio on the Fan and CBS Sports Network.